Oh, yeah, good today.
Right, are we all good to go? Yeah. Yeah, you've got the correct. Thank you, everyone, and welcome to the meeting. I'm just turning to my colleague Alex Swatton to check that we've got the live stream on, which we have. So the first item of business on today's agenda is election of chair. Is there anyone who would be willing to chair this meeting?
I would like to nominate Councillor David Page.
Councillor Page, and is that seconded? Thank you, Councillor Nunn. Have we got any other nominations? In which case, Councillor Page, would you like to come and chair the meeting, please?
Okay, so the meeting will be recorded and live streamed by HDC members, and officers must use desk microphones in order for this to work. Good evening. Only 2 microphones in addition to the chairman's can be on at the same time. Mobile phones, please. Members and the public should switch off mobile phones. And now the safety piece, fire exits. There and there. Please don't use the lifts, and over there. And please exit the building and meet at the top of Mill Hill Car Park. So we've gone through and elected the chair. I'm David Page, councillor for one of the councillors for Logan Ward, sorry. And now any apologies for absence we're aware of?
We've received apologies from Councillor Phil Knowles.
Okay. Okay, and are there any declarations of members' interests? No, none. Okay. So, turning to the outcomes of public consultation on on whether to have a new council for Market Harborough. So, how do we approach this? Do you want to then get into your report?
I'm happy to present.
Yes.
I'm conscious, Councillor Asher.
Yeah. Sorry, Councillor Asher.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to ask a question. So there were 6 members on the committee, but now there seems to be 7. Has this changed?
So Councillor Dunn's attending as the portfolio holder.
Correct.
Ah, okay. Thank you.
Okay. So we're looking at the recommendation that the Community Governance Review Working Group provides its thoughts on the outcomes of the public consultation and points raised in this report in order to support preparation of a report and recommendations to Council.
Thank you, Chair. So as the report sets out, we'll be preparing in the very near future a report to go to Council, and we're currently earmarking an extraordinary meeting on the 1st of June, although that hasn't been out for wider consultation members yet, but we're currently earmarking that date, at which Council will be asked to decide whether or not to proceed with the Community Governance Review. So in a couple of meetings' time, we'll be asking this working group to make that recommendation to Council on whether or not to have a new council for Market Harborough, and that will be considered by the council. This report deals with the outcome of the public consultation. On May 6th, you'll receive a report on the outcomes of the local poll that's taking place on Thursday. So we hope the papers for that will be issued on Friday morning. And you will also be seeing some information about if council decides to proceed to the next phase, what information we'll need to consult on at that point. So we'll be looking at warding arrangements, number of councillors and so on. It's a very technical phase we have to go through at the next stage. So all of those matters we'll be looking at on the 6th. And then on the 14th, we'll bring that all together into a single report to determine the recommendation to Council, if you feel able to do so at that point. So this report is just looking at the outcomes of the consultation. And my intention is, if you're broadly happy with it, it'll pretty much be a lift and shift into the Council report. But I'm really keen to hear your views on what you think we need to expand on in the report, arguments you think need to be enhanced or we haven't given sufficient weight to, or things that are completely missing from this report and you'd like to see focused upon. The report is quite long and there's some quite detailed work within the appendices. So 428 unique responses to the consultation. We had about 440, but there was a few duplicates in there. So we had to pick a few out as being duplicates. It was very clear throughout the consultation that a large proportion of residents supported the new council being set up. And as well as the report, you've got an appendix, which is has been prepared by an independent consultant on our behalf, who went through, analysed all the responses, has summarised those as well in his appendix, but he's also given a complete list of all those people that gave a narrative response. They didn't just vote, yes, I support the creation of a new council. They also said, and this is why. What came across really strongly within that consultation was that people felt there's a very strong community governance argument. At the moment, Market Harborough is the only unparished area of the district. I think it's unfortunate some people argue that means we're unrepresented, because actually you do have councillors that are elected for Market Harborough. And I think in the public consultation events we've held, actually people are being quite complimentary about how hardworking they recognise their councillors are. What the point they're trying to make is that as district councillors, as county councillors, councillors also have a duty to the wider area. So they've got to think about what's best for Market Harborough, but also what's best for Harborough, what's best for Leicestershire. And what people are saying they want is someone that's specifically there to only say what's best for Market Harborough.
Councillor Bremner, yeah.
I think that's a very good point, because as councillors, we all had to make a decision on the local plan. And as councillors, we made that on the basis of the district, not necessarily the patches we all represent. So I think that feeling among the population is quite pertinent for Market Harborough, I think. Thank you.
Does anyone else want to make any comment on that?
And actually that comes out when you start thinking about the role of the Special Expenses Panel, because I think people have welcomed that introduction, but they also say, well, it's not there to be the parish council advocate for planning applications, because ultimately the district council is the determining body for planning applications, so it can't fulfil that role. So I think if you look at the debate in that context, I think it slightly shifts from that we're not represented, it's more about how you're represented. I want to also make clear there were people that didn't support the establishment of a new council. We do have to give regard to those views as well. So there is that concern about, actually, is the timing right regarding local government review for the whole of Leicestershire? And secondly, is it then adding a layer of bureaucracy back? You take a layer out by taking out districts and counties, but also you're then setting up a new council. The counterbalance to that, of course, is that if you don't do that, what does LGR look like for Market Harborough? Will you see a loss of representation? And you'll see in the report, I've done some analysis of the different LGR proposals that are on the table right now. We don't know what the government will prefer, but at the moment, it's not very clear about exactly what role parish and town councils will play in a future local government reorganisation world. One of the final points that was raised and has come up, and it's actually come up through the poll really in some of the social media debates, rather than necessarily through the consultation, was about estate management companies. I think there is a view that some people feel it would be unfair that they would have to pay towards their estate management company and they would also have to pay towards a parish or town council. And is that right and fair? There's lots of pros and cons you can argue to that. One of the concerns, as somebody that's lived in an estate management company property as well, you do have access to some spaces, but you don't have access to facilities like a cemetery or perhaps an allotment, some do and some don't, or other local facilities that are not just for that estate management company area. So you don't want to sort of try and exclude that bit and that bit and that bit and then find, but actually they don't have those rights and things. So you do have to balance this argument very carefully, because I do appreciate people may be frustrated if they feel, well, we're being double taxed. It's not necessarily the case, but it is a consideration. I think that's all I'll say for now. Obviously, be interested to hear members' thoughts.
Can I go around the room? There's an easy way of doing it. I'll start with you, Councillor Woodywust, if you don't mind, if you've got comments.
No, so thank you, Chair. It's a lovely report. Thank you very much. What I read of it, haven't had much time. I'm an advocate, as you know, so I'm on the positive side of this. I do see the financial argument, but we do, as you know, already pay for the maintenance within our special expenses line on our council tax. I did want to clarify, though, where there is an estate management company, there's no provision for a discount. No, so they do pay the flat rate. Okay. That's me. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Ashett.
Yeah, I mean, this report shows that there is more people that want it than don't want it. And there's obviously a strong argument for wanting it and a strong argument against it. I think the arguments against it are more about financial, and the arguments for it are more about local representation, which I think would be my my sway. I already live in a parish area, so I'm quite privileged to have a parish council that do fight for planning applications. But if I lived in the town and in an unparished area, I probably would want to have a group of people that were passionate and able to fight for me. So yeah, I think this sort of does sum up that people do want it for that reason, to have local people, and also they'd be able to apply for grants and things like that. And if there isn't a town council, I'm not sure how that would happen with the new unitary. So yeah, that's how I've read it.
Thank you for that. Councillor Nunn.
Yeah, I'll just say thanks for the report. I mean, it makes very interesting reading and it's very comprehensive. I think we've just got to wait for the poll now and then see where we go next.
Councillor Dunn.
Thank you for offering, Chairman, although I'm not part of this committee. I come from a very large parish council, and I was parish councillor for 22 years at Broughton Astley. So I see the value in many ways. The problem, well, I don't, not a problem, but you have to be very careful the amount of money that you're spending on it and what you intend to spend on it, because there's a precept attached to it in future years. As long as you get that right, and the will of the people is that you want one, I don't have a problem.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Bremner.
I think it's a very good summary on page 23 of responses to different questions, and the complete drift is, in academic terms, you've got a first class in those who want to have a parish council, it's like 70%. And equally, those who don't want the question, there's no change needed to the arrangements in Mark Harbour. Again, there, the disagreement is 76%. But the one thing that I want to make a point on is the drift I've got from attending neighbourhood fora in Logan is that local people want to be represented by local people. And what I mean by that is apolitical, non-political people representing the town. I think that is, I don't think we can prescribe that, but I think that's a real strong drift from the neighbourhood fora. And my discussions with the neighbourhood fora that I've attended, there's clearly a number of individuals already thinking about standing for the parish council if it comes into existence, and then they can decide whether they wanted to become a town council. I think there still has to be acknowledgement, though, of those who do not wish to see it, as you've said, do not wish to see a parish council. And they are represented here in lesser amount, not majority amount, but still a significant amount. I mean, no change needed to the arrangements to take place in Market Harbour. Agree to no change, 50%, sorry, 12, no, I've got that wrong. Sorry, it's only 12%. I was looking at the number, I beg your pardon. But there is concern on how we set up and what is ascribed to the parish council in terms of cost. I mean, I think you have a benchmark. You have a benchmark of what is already paid per household in the special expense. So whatever is planned, I believe, should be designed, for want of a better word, around that figure. So then that will possibly limit what the parish council can actually take on. equally, the parish council might want to take on aspects if, for instance, the bowls club is refurbished, or the bowls area, or the pavilion is refurbished, then that might be an income stream for a parish council if they want to take on that asset. But if they take on the asset, they also have to take on the upkeep of that asset. And if the roof leaks, they'll have to repair it. If someone breaks a window, they'll have to repair the window. So those who are red hot keen on a parish council have to be aware that with election comes responsibility. And I think that has to be spelled out quite clearly. So there's opportunity, but it has to be, as Councillor Dan said, with the experience of a parish council, it has to be designed really carefully. Otherwise, they could be left with a real pig's elephant, or what you want to call it, and laden with cost upon cost. I had thought there might be opportunity with like the Grow On Centre and the Innovation Centre, but I think that's too much. That's too far to a business responsibility rather than a parish council responsibility. Parish council is more about the grass cutting, the Welland Park, the gardeners, and that's quite a cost. That's a wage cost there. So again, all of that has to be factored to around about the precept cost. And then you'd have to make that assessment of whether that cost is going to be higher or lower. And we don't know that yet, because we don't know what the parish council will be responsible for. So we need to take, rather than all the hopes of the community, we have to look at Broughton Astley, we have to look at Lutterworth, we have to look where the parish councils exist in Lubbock, what they are responsible for. And that's about the limit. So they can't fix everything. And I think we have to take really close note of where the best practice is, and not just follow the sort of the wave of enthusiasm for a parish council before you've actually step back and think, whoa, don't raise expectations so far that they're going to have a precept that is like twice the current level. So they're my thoughts anyway. Thank you.
Thank you for that. For my own position, I've never been against the idea of extending local democracy further. I do think it's an important concept, and I like the idea very much that people are represented as locally as possible. I think it's important. My issue has always been the timing, but I think, Paul, you raise a good point about costs, and if we can meet, if you like, the special expenses costs associated that are currently in place for any future arrangement, that would be a good place to start at least. Councillor Woodworth, sorry.
Yes, so I think in the original presentations and briefings we had on this, political interference in the initial precept is very dangerous for the council. So we can talk about our aspirations of where the council sits, but we do need the officers to work out that initial precept, not us to have any bearing on it.
I think it was more really the concept behind that, more than actually political interference in that sense. But I think if a lot of people are worried about the increase in cost to suit ambition, then at least we know there's a good starting place, that it won't actually cost you any more. I think that's been the issue, and I don't think we can actually get into that debate tonight, and we certainly can't do it out there in amongst the public either, because no one actually knows what it is that's going to be provided in one sense. So nobody's right and nobody's wrong in that sense at all, but it'd be good to have that as a baseline. Yeah, thank you for that. Councillor Bremner?
What I didn't say was, I think my fundamental view of this is that it's a democratic deficit, because we're not 100% sure LGR will happen, but we're pretty certain. And to leave a community without local representation, it's not the representation, it's it's in law, the representation that they can give to the upper authority. And if you don't have that, you're at a loss. And you don't have that local voice to advise the unitary councillors that would be in place, because there'd only be one or two or three in the area. But the parish council would make up a much broader pool of people locally that can advise those unitary councils as well, if they want to listen. All right, thank you.
Councillor Dunn?
Yeah, maybe I should just add, the bigger the council, the bigger the cost, because staffing doesn't come cheap and you tend to have more staff. I can remember Rutland Ashley Parish Council when we had one clerk and maybe one cleaner, that was it. But now we've got a load of staff and the precept is a lot higher, so you have to bear that in mind. But you need to tell and spell out what those costs are.
So I think that's actually very true. And one of the examples used was Braunston. I think I've seen in some of the literature that was put out there for the campaign, which was originally meant to, I think, start small, became far, far bigger. But, you know, that's a decision that can be taken in the future if that's what the voters want. Councillor Nunn?
Yeah, I'm just going back to the first meeting we had, Leah. Do you remember telling us about the potential difficulties with finding parish clerks for the size of the parish we were looking of putting in place? And I just wondered what sort of risks there are with not being able to find the right person to actually be able to undertake that role.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. I mean, one of the differences is you're creating something new here. So there's something attractive for a clerk who's looking to develop into the role, or maybe has been an experienced clerk elsewhere and thinks, oh, that's a really interesting thing to do. So it sometimes can be easier to get clerks in. I mean, in the first place, we'll probably be looking at just giving someone interim, and there is a market of interim clerks as well, just until the new council then gets to go, okay, this is the sort of person and skills and role profile we're looking for. I don't see that significant challenge, but it's a conversation I've got to keep having with El Rauk as to how the market is looking at the time.
I think one of the other things that I was thinking about here was the delivery of a town council that is, if it's possible, as pure as it possibly can be from politics. I don't know if that's possible. You know, I'd like to think that people could be independent, but I think we know that there are a number of people who have various ideas about what they want, but you know, that's democracy. Let it be tested and see what happens if that's the case. But actually, I think there are a lot of people also who are very quiet on the whole enterprise. And I think they're the disaffected majority effectively, who are, I think, without actually putting too fine a point on it, disaffected with politics, national politics that affects us. So the whole idea here, and I get this, is that a lot of people have felt disaffected by the politics of Harbour District, and so want to feel that they're able to influence things about this community. I do kind of get that. Whether it's true or not, I don't know, because as you've said, there has been representation locally. Does that mean that they haven't been well represented? I don't know if that's the case. So that will be the other corollary to that. So, Councillor Woodworth. Oh, hold on, I have to turn it on.
Do I need to repeat?
Okay.
Would you like me to come back on a couple of technical
Yeah.
points I picked up?
Yeah,
So,
please.
you can't stop a town council or parish council from being political if it wants to be. People have the right to stand to represent a parish or a political party on a parish or town council. It's then down to the council what they want to do about it. Some will go, it's fine, you stood, but we're not political. Others will go, and I've seen it work where they literally apply the political balance rules to all their committees as if they were a district council and make it overtly so. But really, it's about what that council wants to do and how they want to act. It's difficult to rule out altogether. I have tried to explain that in the consultation. One thing I haven't mentioned to people making representations around this point is I give political parties a lot of credit in that when there are vacancies on parish and town councils and we need them, if you're struggling, it's often the political parties that are able to find people to come forward. So it can have its benefits too. I mean, in terms of cost, there has been lots said, particularly in relation to the local poll. I think we've tried to be clear that there will be some additional cost in that first year. Beyond that, we can't, my view is we can't really be definitive, because ultimately it comes down to what services you transfer and how the council chooses to run that. I think Councillor Dan Ecker, it sort of hinted at a word of warning that once you start to take things on, once you start to have more responsibilities, it's difficult to rein that back. And you get to that economy of scale point where actually we've got 3, 4 or 5 employees. Actually, that means we need more HR support and we need more finance support. And so it does start to grow a little bit. But ultimately, there are also ways of managing services. If you do it all through contract management rather than people management, it can be cheaper, but then you contract margins. So there's lots of things to throw in the mix of that. And it's really hard to be definitive. But I think it's hard to take the position it will not cost any more. There will be a bit more, certainly in the first year, but it's down to how you work things. And I was also just on that point on assets, it's something we can consider over the summer. I think my in principle starting position I'll put to you as a committee is not initially to transfer any assets, rights, properties, liabilities, because we can put that into our reorganisation order and then have elections to the town or parish council next May. And then once they're elected, they can start to say what they want. We can start to say what we want. The unitary council can say what they want as well. Because, great point over strategic versus operational matters. If your new unitary wants a big focus on health, it won't want to transfer the leisure centre. If it wants a big focus on economic development, it won't want to transfer the innovation and enterprise centres. So you've got to throw all these things in the mix about what's strategic, what's operational, and what makes sense, and also what's done elsewhere, as you say, and best practice elsewhere. So there's a lot to think through in that regard, but we'll be doing some of that work with you over the summer.
Can I just ask a question too as to the next process of the consultation itself? What does that look like?
So if council decides to proceed to the next stage, there's then a further consultation. I'll be bringing a report to you on the 14th that will cover some thoughts on how that should be conducted. So it's likely we'll need to consult on, and it's common to consult on potential warding options, the number of councillors that a future council should have, and potentially the ward names as well. Things like transfer of assets, we can do some consultation about. For example, would members of public like us to, or would you like us to consult members of public on what they'd be interested in having run by the council? Even if we don't necessarily take it forward at this stage, it's a working basis for a future discussions to have with the parish about, well, our consultation said people would be interested in that. So that process would start after the next council meeting. So if council was to meet on the 1st of June, we'd then potentially be looking at launching it mid-June until potentially the end of July. And then we'd be discussing the outcomes of that to go to council in September. And that will then feature into the final reorganisation order. We'll also need to go through with you as a group things like the potential precept. So we're just talking about that. What will be their first year charge we'll put into the order, and potentially discussing some transitional arrangements as well from where we are now to May 2027 with the first elections.
Are there any questions about that? No. So if we're all happy with the report as is, then it'll go into the final draft for council to meet and then decide further. Are we all happy about that? Yep. Okay, cool. Then that's that. Number 5 is any urgent business. No, there's no urgent business. So that means then that we can to close. Exactly.